and welcome to episode 215 of The Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies for the casual spike. My name is Stanislav here in Manchester, almost at Chicago.
Old habits.
Die Hard. I'm in Manchester.
Not a Christmas movie.
No, it is not.
Don't start
I'm in
that.
Manchester.
Okay.
I'm with Shane. He's on the line from Denver, Colorado. Hey, Shane.
I am. Stanislav, my friend. Stanislav, do you hear this? Do you hear this? Click, 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 click.
Shane, tell me, how do you take your tea?
So
Infrequently.
Actually, you know the type of tea I like. It's actually an herbal. It's an herbal supplement, liquid herbal supplement. I think. I think technically they're not allowed to call it tea. At least maybe in the UK, it's where they can't call it tea.
Unless it comes from the province of tea.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just leaf juice.
It just doesn't have the same ring to say we're going to spill the liquid herbal supplement when I call my besties. Spill some liquid herbal supplement for me, friends.
Well, so you know how Celestial Seasoning is based out of Boulder, or is it Boulder? It's like nearby, right? So the Celestial Seasoning, the famous tea company, right, with the Sleepy Time bear and whatnot. He's got the little nightcap. He's probably got like a candlestick.
Yeah.
You go there, and I think in the States we can call it tea, and other countries are like, look, this is not tea. This is just an herbal beverage because it's like flowers and rose hips and whatnot. So that's what I drink, like lemon zinger.
Gotcha.
And raspberry zinger.
Gotcha.
Those are not real teas. They're just like flower concoctions. But this morning, the reason I did the audio glucking is because it's 8:15 my time, and I didn't sleep well, and I have liquid caffeine in my hand, and I made like 26 ounces, I believe, and I might drink all of it.
You're also drinking out of a mug that has your name on it.
Yeah, this is a gift of Brian. If you're listening out there, I appreciate this mug you found for me at a thrift shop and sent to me. It's from the Houston Space Center, which neither of us were ever at, but it does have my name on it. Bort.
Also with us, the Bort father, Dave Harbarger.
I have what I like to call, so I have a beverage here too. I like to call this, in honor of the subject of today's episode, I call this Stanislav's Bane. Because their one ring is called Isildur's Bane. Really.
I did not know that.
Yes.
No.
Really? This is Stanislav's Bane. It is decaf iced Americano.
Oh, God.
Oh.
Why do you do that to yourself?
It's great.
It's also called What's the Point? Like you go to the bar and you say you go to the barista and give me a what's the point?
Give me a man grappling with his inability to deal with caffeine suddenly. I just had some Pop-Tarts too. It's all good. It's coming up. It's all coming up, Dave.
Okay, hold on. This is I know that we're just kind of extending this intro out a little bit.
Oh, we have lots of material for the intro here. Okay.
What's your favorite Pop-Tart? There are 3 that I want to eat.
Cinnamon frosted is the best for me.
Okay, that's not one I usually eat, but I can definitely concede that it sounds good. I am seriously a strawberry frosted, blueberry frosted.
Sure.
Or s'mores.
Yeah, s'mores.
That's a jump, though, because I feel like s'mores is just a whole other... That's the one where it goes from not even pretending it's not dessert to just being like, this is dessert. At least when I give my kids strawberry frosted ones, it's like, okay, I had these when I was a kid. But when you get the ones that are like Snickerdoodle flavored or Reese's peanut butter cup flavored or s'mores, I'm like, okay, we're just having these...
The Oreo, cookies and cream.
Yeah.
Well, some breakfast desserts are good, like coffee and pie for breakfast. Is that not just a dessert for breakfast?
True.
Well, I mean, it's literally a dessert for breakfast, yes. Stanislav.
Shane.
You're now about 10 feet from the camera, but...
I prefer you say 2.5 meters, please.
Stanislav, you're about 2.33 meters away from the camera, and thankfully... The cord on our headsets is like 15 feet long.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I'm hanging my laundry, obviously.
Oh my goodness,
Shane, Europe doesn't
the
have
size
dryers.
Of that sock. Is that a tiny 1-year-old sock?
Yeah, aren't they cute?
Oh my god.
Yeah, I had to manage some laundry today, and due to scheduling constraints, it just made the most sense for me to do it for the next 5 minutes while we get through housekeeping. This wet? This isn't as wet as I like it to be. I'm gonna rewash that sock.
You know what's nice? No room noise from laundry. Anyway, Shane, please, before this gets completely devolves, tell us what we're doing this week, or since Stan is busy folding laundry.
Yeah, I can do that. So this week, take. I don't even know how to say this.
I'll do it. I can do it.
I know how to say it. I have such hesitance to say it. So please tag in here, Stan.
We're taking our first trip to the world of Arda, Shane. I think it's pronounced
really
Arda.
The world is called?
Yeah, Middle Earth is a continent. Middle Earth
Yeah.
is a continent.
Okay.
Arda is the world,
Got it.
obviously.
How many moons does it have?
Dave?
Did they ever get into that in the lore?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
But go on.
I heard one was made of compressed powdered Gandalf.
Okay. Cool.
And then they put it in their herbal beverage supplements or whatever. You guys ever try that moon juice?
into their Hobbit pipes. Yeah, we're not great at LOTR lore, but we are going to talk about LOTR cards from this summer's Tales of Middle-earth set. Not because it's coming out particularly soon, but we've already started getting spoilers, and we really want to talk about it conceptually.
Yeah.
As well as look at some of the cards that may have piqued our interest or the interest of others. So we'll chat about maybe its potential and desired applications for Modern. But then we also set aside some time at the end of the episode to actually talk about this week's release of Shadows over Innistrad Remastered on Arena, which brings Explorer one step closer to Pioneer, for some decks at least. And then maybe I'll regale you guys with more stories about appliances that don't exist in England.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, along with the Shadows over Innistrad stuff, I think there's a little bit kind of new stuff about Arena and kind of Arena in general that I want to revisit. We really haven't talked about Arena probably like in 6+ months, and there's been one interesting change to like the Arena economy that I think is worth analyzing and assessing. So,
All right. But first,
let's do it.
some housekeeping.
This is some fast housekeeping.
It is, because we have nothing to report on the Patreon front this week. That's fine. But if you want to support us on Patreon, please check us out at patreon.com/thedivedown. You can join our Discord server. You can get some swag. You can send us some notes there, the Dive Down, our patreon.com/thedivedown. And then if you want to support us via buying merch directly from us, you can go get that Rhino shirt. You can get a hat. The stocking caps are attractive, even though winter is on the way out. They're pretty nice stocking caps. We have nice normal baseball caps as well. Check it out at thedivedown.com/store.
The store rules, by the way. And then managerator's.com. If you want to get better at Magic, you're likely, if you have a computer and you want to play Magic online, you're probably renting your cards, or you'll want to rent your cards. Go to managerator's.com. Use sign-up code TheDiveDown10. Gets you 10% off your first 2 months of ManaTrader's service. We appreciate all who have been using it for so long with our code. Our friends Barrister and Man, you can use code TheDiveDown2023 for 15% off your first order there. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about them later. And then if you want to get some paper cards at Nerd Rage Gaming, you can get 8% off your order for Dive Down listeners with the code DIVE8. Done.
Housekeeping.
Speedy.
All right, first segment.
That's a wrap. All right.
We're going to hop into talking about Tales of Middle-earth. Stan,
Yes.
I think you have some thoughts about where this set is coming from.
Yes. So here's the funny thing. It doesn't drop until June 23rd.
Why are we talking about it so much then? Everyone's talking about the set. It's all the buzz.
It's because we've already started seeing cards.
It's because we cannot live without spoilers. And so spoiler season is here 3 months early. There's nothing, we already had spoilers from March of the Machines. That comes out in a few weeks. But we already had our first look at Tales of Middle-earth, and they had some interesting things to show. So
Yeah.
that's why we're talking.
And look, also, people love Lord of the Rings. Like, this is, I think, really important to people as fans in general. And of course, there's the implication of its modern implications.
Yeah.
The implication of its implications.
What's funny is I was talking with my dad about this, and maybe you all know, but my dad, let's call him first generation local LGS owner, perhaps, maybe generation 1.5. We had a store in Cleveland, Ohio, on the west side of Cleveland from about 1995 to 2007. or so was the full run of the show, of the store.
Dave, did you know the Cleveland State women's team was in the NCAA tournament? I did not know that.
I did see that. Yeah. Yeah.
But go on.
Yeah. So my dad, who has had a somewhat love-hate relationship with Magic, loved the game, always kind of like he was one of those really like frustrated players. I don't think that he would be mad about me saying that to all our thousands of listeners who are many years younger than him. But, ran a store, made a place for people, loved Magic, loves Lord of the Rings. This is the first time I was talking to him about it. He was like, I'm going to talk to him. He still does baseball card stuff. So he's like, I'm going to talk to my distributor and see if I can get some boxes just to open for myself of this stuff. And I was like, what are you going to do with it? He's like, I don't know. It's just going to be cool to have some of it.
Yeah. I feel like your dad also just kind of had a few random card products, right? Like you said, you had some of the old Star Wars stuff or something like that. Like
I have the Decipher Lord of the Rings cards here.
Yeah.
Like I have a Ring Wraith and I have an Eowyn and I have a, what's Viggo Mortensen's characters? Aragorn. I have an Aragorn card. Like they're all foil box toppers from the mid 2000s Decipher game that came out.
Sweet.
Very. Maybe those old cards will help us evaluate these new ones too, to some extent. But before we talk about actual cards, I do want to take a minute to do a temperature check on where we're at with another straight to modern set on the horizon. Because it's been almost exactly 2 years since MH2. Like they're dropping June 2 years apart.
Right.
You want to know what I like? That there's not a Modern Horizons 3 this summer. That's the main thing I like. It's just like that. I think that, Horizon sets clearly are designed to extract some cash from modern players and also change the format up, potentially for better. I mean, I think there's a lot of arguments that, the Horizon set, Horizons 2 at least, changed modern in significant ways, but potentially for the better. But I think having another straight to modern set, I think the real thing people feel is trepidation, right? That's what we all felt when it was like, okay, we're going to have a Lord of the Rings theme set that is going into modern, and based on what we saw from Horizons 1 and Horizons 2, okay, we're all going to be slinging Gandalfs at one another, and Frodo is going to be the new Ragavan or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that people jump to a lot of conclusions here, though, just from the fact that they said it was going to be released in modern. Like I've said this ever since they announced this set. They did not say this is a replacement for a Modern Horizon set. They did not say that this is a modern power level set. I just don't think, until we know more, we can really speculate that this is supposed to be a replacement for MH3. Trust me, MH3 will come out at some point. Modern Horizons 2 is one of the most profitable and popular products that Wizards ever put out.
Yeah, and so it's really hard to imagine, actually. And once we start talking about these cards, I think we will see kind of what the power level and thematic elements we're looking at here are likely going to be for much of the rest of the set. I can't imagine them possibly imagining on their end that they would be able to successfully design a Horizons 3 set and a Lord of the Rings set that were both designed to shake up modern and not have something dramatically terrible happen. Because I would 95% believe that these sets were developed in relative isolation, if not complete isolation. And we know that there'd be so much danger of Horizons level power coming out of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I don't mean MH3 is coming out now. I imagine it'll come out next year.
Yeah, next year. Yeah,
like that.
But even that, even 1 year apart would be wild.
Yeah.
In terms of the potential danger.
I'm just shocked that they're not continuing to try to monetize modern with that set, that they took this cycle off to do that. Anyway, Stan.
Yeah.
Get us back on track. You have some pointed thoughts.
What, this is not on track?
I'm just trying to reel you in, buddy.
Well, the thing that I keep thinking about is that MH2, as Shane sort of pointed out, essentially redefined the format, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
And has since then made for a very consistent metagame and modern environment. Things ebb and flow, but a lot of the decks that we've seen over the last 2 years have kind of just been quite stable. And prior to the release of MH2, there was perhaps genuine concern among players that what was once an eternal format has sort of become this rotating format due to both the addition of Modern Horizons cards in general, but also the power level of Standard.
Yeah.
In the Fire era, as we call it. So, on the one hand, Wizards seems to have solved maybe that Standard problem. Like, I feel like Standard doesn't really impact Modern in general, save for a handful of good cards every year or so. There were, 2 or 3 all of last year that made the cut. But what about this new, like, straight to Modern approach to changing the format, providing shakeups, injecting new power to old decks, or maybe powering down existing decks? And we actually ran this poll on Twitter, a very scientific poll a couple weeks ago, where we asked our followers whether they would rather get a Modern shakeup from Tales of Middle-earth, or whether they would prefer to just keep playing this post-MH2 format for another year or two. And although respondents slightly favored a shakeup, it was really narrow. 52% said that they were ready for a shakeup among 350 votes. So I guess I'm curious, like, how do we feel? Do we want a change in the format? Like, are we happy with the same, 10-ish decks kind of coming and going here and there? Or do we want to see something truly fresh and maybe like truly metagame defining, even if it's 1 or 2 decks in general, like being added to Modern?
So I'm guessing that you'd rather have us answer this question through the lens of the Lord of the Rings set, right? Because like I think I could answer that question in 2 different ways, I guess, which is like, do I want Modern to get a shakeup through Standard, or in general, or do I want Modern to get a shakeup through Lord of the Rings?
Well, I don't think we're getting a Standard shakeup. Like,
no. So that's what I'm saying is like, would I rather see the power level of Standard push that we would sort of get the gradual development of Modern that we sort of had pre-MH sets? Or would I rather it have through supplemental sets like Horizons or Lord of the Rings? And I think Horizons has proven to be more interesting than not for the format. Like, it gives us a lot to talk about. It keeps people engaged with the format, keeps me engaged with the format. But like you said, it's been almost, it's basically 1 year and 3/4 since Horizons 2. And we're kind of, living in a fairly static environment.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the metagame breakdown we did on Modern 3 weeks ago, say, when we were looking at all those challenges, just as a reminder, the top 32s of challenges in February, it's March. I know I haven't looked recently at the same data, but, Murktide was 17%, Rakdos Scam was 10% of that, Omnath was 6%, Creativity was 6%, Hammer Time was 5%, It's all really familiar decks. And while we do see the brewers out there innovating, Spike is trying stuff. I tried some weird decks last week. Nothing is really taking a foothold and kind of taking over the format as a whole. And they're even staying in the same order almost as they have over the last couple of years.
Yeah, speaking of Spike, anecdotally, he did mention on stream that he was consulted on, I think, just some Middle-earth cards in general. And though I'm guessing, did not see the majority of the set, I don't know for sure, but from what he observed and what he was able to share, he made it seem that the Modern format in general would be fine, and that this wasn't going to be an earth-shattering set, from his perspective.
Or even a Middle-earth shattering set.
Wow. So I don't think I really answered your question, Stan. And my initial kind of thought when I heard about this was like, oh man, I do not care about what's the umbrella term they use for this? Like extended
universes beyond.
Yes, universes beyond. Like, I just don't care about universes beyond stuff. Like, I think it's a little weird that like, Magic, which is sort of a generic fantasy theme with a few continuing, planes and whatnot. And then as soon as I started looking at these, well, then I was also like, okay, Lord of the Rings, wow, that's like a known fantasy element that's going to like sort of infiltrate my precious Magic the Gathering, where I never really cared about the lore, honestly. But as soon as I started looking at these cards, like I was surprised how like I was just like, I don't care. Like, these are just like, they're just like, these are new game pieces.
They're
like,
just
sure,
Magic
okay.
cards. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just Magic cards. Okay, cool. Like, sure, it's like Frodo, it's Sam, it's Gandalf and whatnot. And it might be a combination of the fact that it's like, okay, this is clearly not a new Ragavan. Like, I'm not going to be seeing Frodo every game, or at least this particular Frodo every game.
Yeah.
And if I was, like, maybe I'd be kind of peeved. But, like, I'm already just kind of like, okay, like, if I see a Gandalf once every 10 games, it's like, whatever. Okay, it's Gandalf. I'm already over it. Like, and it might just be the fact that, like, I'm old and have better things to worry about. But, like, I think we will be fine. Although I don't know how I'll feel about that if it's like, going back to like the Street Fighter special layer, like if Ryu was a card that was like modern playable, and I was like, okay, you're fireballing me with Ryu. I don't know.
I mean, I did have that weird moment recently where I opened a box of Phyrexia set boosters and I got a commander card out of it. And I was like, this is Asha of Sparks and Smoke. And I was like, it's a prowess commander and it does cool stuff, like cheaty stuff with sorceries. And I was like, maybe I'll make a commander deck around this. I haven't had a commander deck in a long time. And I was looking at it, and then someone in the Discord was like, that's just Ken from the Street Fighters reskinned it back into Magic. And I was like, and then I was like, I also hate Ken. I was not a Ken. I was a Chun-Li main, because I don't really know how to play fighting games. So Chun-Li just press the kick buttons. Yeah. And, but it did make me go, am I really going to do this? But at any rate, just, funny aside there. But I agree.
Was funny, Dave.
But do you want to shake up, Shane? I don't know if you answered that question.
What is a shakeup?
Okay.
That's the other
I wouldn't
question.
mind. I think great. I would like something in between, like an old standard, like an expected sort of standard shakeup, and a Modern Horizons 2 shakeup. And I would really actually prefer it more on like this, like extremely good standard set level, like let's say like a Throne of Eldraine level, or like a M20.
Throne is maybe too much, buddy. Throne is
M20.
Maybe,
okay. Well, like after Ban's Throne.
Yeah.
Let's say M20.
I think M20 is a good. Yeah, it's funny. You kind of nailed exactly what I was going to say.
Same,
and
to be
exactly
honest.
the way I was going to describe it was, let's have this be an impactful standard level set.
Or a year of standard sets. Like if we look back at last year, we got Ledger Shredder, we got Fable the Mirror Breaker, maybe one or two other cards that I'm not remembering right now.
Yeah.
And we had to wait a year for that slow drip, right? I wouldn't mind if we saw like a handful of good cards, but what MH2 did, I think, is kind of like created a lot of new synergies that support its very specific play styles. And the slow drip we got from standard doesn't really do that. Like it doesn't redefine entire decks. It kind of just like sometimes enhances decks. So that's probably where the three of us are at, right? It's just like, let's get some cool, exciting game pieces, but we don't need to open set boosters just to have like as many of these cards as possible, because it's going to be like entire cycles of playables.
Yeah, to try to open a play set of Ragavans or whatever, or 5 different things that you have to have in the elementals, basically. This does lead me to the question though of, okay, how does Wizards imagine this set being played if it's not standard legal and it's not really that impactful for modern, hopefully, right? Then it's sort of like, okay, is this just just a commander product? Or do in their minds, do they see building like I kind of wonder if they see building like an alternate format almost that's like play your Lord of the, like maybe they think people might just play Lord of the Rings Magic and that's it. Like kitchen table people might just say, I have 3 boxes of Lord of the Rings Magic. I made some decks out of it. And my friends and I only play Lord of the Rings Magic. Like I kind of wonder if they think that could be. If I don't know, it's a weird case.
Well, we all start as kitchen table players, Dave, in the womb. But I saw it differently. Like I actually just kind of think it's marketing. Like let's just look at the fact that our MTG worlds have like these sci-fi fantasy overlaps with just like other fantasy properties in general, and our system can be modded to work with other fantasy properties. Let's try to capture a bunch of fans of Lord of the Rings that maybe haven't dipped their toe in Magic yet. The way I think they were trying to do with some of the D&D sets in general too is like, we have this overlap. Why not see if we can like grow the fan base through a common love of wizards and spells and hobbitses?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it totally makes sense. So
I also actually think
maybe
that
it's trying to get them back in.
Yeah, and I feel like the fact that it's using such a popular property like LOTR is maybe the thing that's going to keep it from being another MH2. Because if it's as powerful as Modern Horizons 2, like I don't know if that's necessarily drawing in new players.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's actually something I said the first time we talked about this set was the Lord of the Rings players are not enfranchised players, and it's probably going to have some beginner type logic to how it works, how the set works, and things like that. And so that's another reason it makes me wonder if it's just like, here people play Lord of the Rings Magic forever, and that's fine, you know?
Okay, so that being said, we're about to start looking at the cards themselves, but I want to propose to you guys a new, almost like card evaluation model. Because once upon a time, we used to do all of our spoiler episodes with a quick recap of like how we look at cards. And I want to propose that MH2 has changed that completely. Because some of the old heuristics that we use for like 1 mana removal, 2 mana creatures, 3 mana walkers, like I don't think that's as relevant as it used to be. And
Right.
in modern, at least, like some of the terms have changed.
Yeah, it's funny. We'll go through all these that I agree with, and then none of them will apply to any of the cards in this set.
Yes. So I think it's fine to say these because I agree with you, Stan, that it's changed. But we can come back to this and refine this over time.
Yes.
So, but yes, I do think it's funny that these are the new rules of Modern, and then not many of these cards fit this. I would say maybe 1 or 2 fit it. But go ahead.
Well, I guess we'll see about that. But here's my quick and dirty list of like how to maybe look at cards in a post MH2 world, at least in these straight to modern sets. 1 is cheap threats with extra abilities. So these are things like Ragavan or Esper Sentinel, something that can come down early and then offer gradual value at different stages of the game.
Yeah. And by cheap, we mean like 1 mana. Like it's 1 mana or 2 mana max almost always in Modern now for a fairly cast card.
Yeah. I think the 2 mana creature has to do the same thing though. Like it has to be both good early or good late. And I think Ledger Shredder is actually a pretty good example of that, where it's just like kind of relevant whenever you cast it because it can generate so much value on its own.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing here, the card that sort of is like the top end casting cost wise, I think is actually Fable the Mirror Breaker, which is a 3 mana card that generates a whole bunch of stuff with extra abilities. It generates 2 different creatures essentially. But that's about as pricey as you can get and make it happen in Modern these days, other than like Omnath. But anyway, please proceed.
What's better than these pricey cards are free spells.
Yes.
So
Love free.
In this case, I'm thinking about the Evoke Elementals, but even if they're conditional and potentially require you to 2-for-1 yourself, like Force of Negation and Force of Vigor fit this bill as well. I think that every free spell in MH2 actually sees play, and the Wizards design team probably learned how to make these cards relevant when they're actually printed. This could also even include Cascade payoffs. So, long story short, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, if anything is free or can be played for free as a Cascade payoff, like, is worth a second look. And we're probably not looking at the Force cycle from MH1 again, where it's just like you kind of some are good and the rest are like wholly unplayable.
Right.
Still annoyed by that design, but go on.
Yeah, I'm still holding on to my Force of Despairs. I think those cards are. All right, next group is cheap but flexible interaction. So it doesn't just have to be 1 mana cards, though Unholy Heat and Blacksmith Skill are that. But even things like maybe Counterspell or Fire Ice at 2 mana-ish. We have to be able to interact somehow. We can't spend a lot of money or a lot of resources on doing that. So what do our interaction spells actually do to impact the game in more ways than one?
Yeah. Perfect.
And then finally, cheaty payoffs. So here I'm thinking of things like Archon of Cruelty and Sarah's Emissary. But this to me is actually even on the bubble a little bit. And if we start looking deeper, like we're entering the realm of very deck-specific cards and tools. Yeah, but if we can cheat cards in general, like what are the best things to do with that? And that's like the creatures that are super splashy, but probably come at a very high casting cost.
Yeah, I would add one sort of corollary to this one is that I don't think it's just about casting cost. I don't think it's just about cheating into play. There are other ways to cheat things, like blinking them or removing them to your hand returning them to your hand over and over again, and recasting. And it's important. This is a thing that I think makes sense. Like you said, it's about specific cards and tools, but there are reasonable tools to do several different moving cards from zone to zone cheating things in Magic, in Modern in particular right now. And I would think that this payoffs idea should apply to any of that zone moving, whether it's deck to battlefield, battlefield to hand, graveyard to battlefield, exile to battlefield, like stuff like that. I think should all be in that space.
Like Calder Complete is like another cheaty payoff for
Right.
Stoneforge. Where do you put Murktide in this? Is that a cheaty payoff or is that a cheap threat? Or is it both? Because it has Delph.
I kind of just think that's a cheap threat.
Cheap threat. I would call that as well. Yeah. I mean, it's a cost-reduced cheap threat, right?
It's just a 2-mana 8/8 flyer.
I think
Shane,
Delph
great
is
point.
cheating.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be one of these things. Any of these, the best cards are probably more than one of these things potentially. Like, so that's another thing to keep an eye on, is that something that's really good in one of these categories can be enough, but if it's two of these things, even better.
Bob's your uncle.
Bob's your uncle. Your uncle's name is Chris.
Chris is your uncle.
My uncle's name is Bill.
My uncle's name is Yuri.
Yuri.
Yuri's your uncle.
This one goes
Now
out to all the uncles out there.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it is a Lord of the Rings set, so this has big uncle energy for sure. Does it not? All right, let's get into this. Let's talk to cards. Let's talk about cards.
I love the fact I have no kids, right? And my nephew's like 11 now, and I am definitely like the weird nerdy uncle to him, where it's just like I know all about the video games he's playing. Like he never trusts me. He's always like, no, the Xbox X came out before the Xbox S, and I'm like, my friend, let's go to Wikipedia. Let's go.
Let me show you what you're going to see have happen in your life over and over and over again.
Let me show you how I interact with all of my friends. And now I'm going to do that to you.
Don't even get me started about the Stevie Wonder discussion we had yesterday on Discord. I can't handle it.
Dave, I believe if when I fall in love with
this
you,
time
it'll be forever.
That's right. That's right. Closed out a classic movie.
Okay, so if we're going to talk about Lord of the Rings, let's talk about like the Lord of the Ring.
Yeah, this is the Ring of the
Cards.
Lords, more so, right? Like, this is the most card.
This
This is the
One
most
Ring.
interesting card.
Shane, read this card.
The One Ring legendary artifact costs you four mana. You know, any freaking color you want, go for it. It's indestructible. When it ETBs, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn, even outside the game. You're shielded from taunts,
Tax
from bad
collectors.
feelings.
Yeah.
At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each burden counter on the One Ring. Tap, put a burden counter on the One Ring, then draw a card for each burden counter on the One Ring. That's logarithmic scaling, I believe. Or is that geometric?
That would be geometric scaling, my friend.
No, I want logarithmic.
Okay. So you want
okay.
1, 2, 4, 8.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is that's the card. That's the
So
card.
first thing about this card. Yes, we know that there's the 1/1 serialized thing. I don't think we have to get deep into it. I do think it's a cool thing. Yeah, it's annoying that Magic does these super high-end collectible stuff that we're experimenting around with. But also, if they're going to do it, it's the most thematic thing possible to have one of these cards floating around with alternate art with serialized one out of one. That's just funny and interesting to me.
Yeah, I think it's cool, honestly. Like at this point, it's just like if it impacted anyone's actual ability to play the game.
Yeah.
Right? Like if they had that's one thing that people say is sketch about Flesh and Blood is the legendary equipment cards that are essential for most classes of character would have like at least one legendary, and there's like one in every 4 boxes. Do you know what I mean? Or something like that. And that's a chase card that does impact you. This does not impact you.
Yeah. So
This is going to impact me when I open it in the Target Collector's Booster and sell it to Logan Paul for $1 million.
They don't have Target in the UK.
Yeah, and they don't sell Magic
front.
cards like anywhere. It sucks.
Yeah. Just stores. Yeah.
Just
They call it archery.
I will say it was funny. I had to explain to my dad, coming back to my dad plus Lord of the Rings and Magic. I was explaining to him yesterday that the serialized one does not come in the regular boxes. It only comes in the collector boosters. And he was like, well, how much are those? And I was like, they're like $400 a box. And he buys those crazy baseball cards that are like 2 packs in a box for like, Topps black chrome or what, I don't know what they are. And he's like, I'm not touching. He's like, I'm not touching those. Forget it. He's like, I just want some of the normal cards. I'm like, all right, man, cool. Anyway.
He says that now.
So we all kind of looked at this card and sort of, I think everybody kind of many people dismissed this card when they read it, right? They're like, it's 4 mana.
I don't think that I dismissed it.
You didn't?
I was compelled by it. It intrigues me.
Yes.
It intrigues me.
Yeah.
The burden is, but I feel the weight of the burden.
It's the One Ring, man. Of course it intrigues you. That's its whole deal.
Yeah.
Yes. That first line of text is really tough to grok. Where
legendary artifact?
Well, no, the fact that it gives you protection from everything until your next turn. That's interesting because like there may be a critical application for that, but it's hard to understand like where you would want to use that. When you would want to use that, right?
Always. You always want to use it.
Yeah.
You just always want protection for a turn.
It's a fog to buy you some time in a controlling deck,
But yeah,
exactly.
But like that doesn't do anything if your opponent has no creatures on the board and you're ahead. Like that line of text does nothing if you're ahead.
Yeah, but it's insurance. It's a good floor for sure. Like if you're ahead, you stay ahead.
Yeah.
If you're behind, you catch up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say is that this is 4 mana, draw a card, which is bad rate, but it sticks around. You just get to keep drawing more cards.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, it's 4 mana, draw 3 cards, and you only take 1 life in that cycle.
Yes.
So if you if you cast this card, you tap it immediately, you draw a card. You have protection from everything. You go back to your turn. You take 1 damage from the burden counter on it. You tap it again, add a burden counter to it, draw 2 more cards. You've drawn 3 cards for 4 mana and fogged. At that point, it only paid 1 life.
Aren't you paying 2 life?
No, because at the beginning of your upkeep, you use 1 life for each burden counter on it. So during your upkeep, there's only 1 burden counter on it from the previous turn.
So you tap it during your upkeep?
No, you don't even have to do that. You just you tap it on the first turn it's in
right.
play.
I see.
It gets a burden counter.
The burden counters only trigger on upkeep.
They lag. Yeah, they're behind. So you get 3 cards for 4 mana and a fog off of this card. I think. See, this is another one that for me. All right, so you guys didn't dismiss it, whatever. When I read this, I was like, that's a lot of text.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. Cards that are good in Magic don't have that much text on them. By the way, that's extremely wrong. One metric we should add to your thing is how many words are on the card versus how much casting. It's like what's
the
word
point
count.
Size of the font?
Yeah, point size of the font and like word count per mana value should be on your metric, Stan, because there are so many cards that have a ton of stuff at any rate. But this card, I think that loop, I saw some people on Twitter, I think I was looking for this tweet. I thought it was Andrea Mangucci, but then I couldn't find who said it, said that this is the best Teferi 5 in Modern. So it's like the top end of a control deck that can catch you back up in a game, give you a little bit of interaction. And I think also this card is abusable in the sense that if you look at ways to bounce this to your hand and replay it, you can just fog someone over and over and over and over and over again and reset the number of burden counters on the card. Yeah. So sure, you might just be drawing 3 cards at a clip for one life and then rebouncing it or something like that. But if you have an every other turn cycle where you have something like Teferi 3 in play, or you're drawing to other cards that bounce this card, and your plan is just to cast the One Ring over and over and over again, I actually think that there are decks that potentially go with that as an end game. Stuff with Urza comes to mind. You can Otawara it. You can cast Paradoxical Outcome, which is a card that has made some splashes in Vintage occasionally with 0 mana casting cost artifacts. You can cast Retract. Are you guys familiar with the card Retract? Retract is a 1 mana return all artifacts you control to their owners' hands. It's a card that's in Darksteel that's been on the edge of like modern playability as a combo piece for a long time. And, then I started thinking about this more and I was like, maybe this could go with Urza, like the, Urza 4 that we all hate.
Lord High Artificer?
Lord High Artificer, that's what it's called. So like, I kind of was just like, wow, there's a lot of stuff you can do with this card when you really start looking at it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I look at stuff where it's like, hey, I'm drawing cards to be a potential trap, like this draws a lot of cards. The thing that you really have to be careful about, of course, is I think kind of even going back to what Stan was saying, is like if I'm behind or if I'm ahead, sure, this keeps me ahead. If I'm behind, this really depends on how far behind I am. Because like this will eat into your life. Like this isn't like it's not a Dark Confidant thing.
Yeah. Not if you don't care about drawing cards with it. Like if you need to stabilize and you have your engine to recast it up, you don't have to tap it. You just fog.
It's not like there's no upkeep. I mean, I guess there is if you use it like once or twice, then you're eating like two life per upkeep, and that will add up if you're not drawing into your bounce, you're drawing into like maybe some life gain or something like that, right? So I think you do have to build around it more than just be like, hey, this is a really awesome divination or something like that, or a good enough divination type thing, right? So
yeah. You can even Whir of Invention this thing to search. You could have it as a one of in a deck with Whir of Invention, search it up, and then bounce it to your hand. Like you don't get the fog from whirring it, but then you can return it to your hand and recast it. Then you get the fog. I don't know. I think the more I look at it, the more I think it's pretty powerful, even for Modern.
What's that 4-mana blue instant that look at the top 4, draw, and then it has flashback? You know what I'm talking about? Came on the list.
Oh, like the memory.
Oh, one? Memory Deluge.
Memory Deluge. So like, that's where this is on the curve. That's instant speed, yes. But we keep talking about like this being maybe a control tool or potentially a combo tool, which I agree. Like, I think it has to be in one of those decks that like don't really care about life total as much and would value like having access to as many cards as possible. So I wonder if that's sort of the spot that we're looking at putting something like this, since this will ultimately draw more cards, and it's probably not going anywhere because it's also indestructible. And I just can't think of, I'm sure they exist, I can't think of any cards that people are playing that are going to like exile an artifact.
No, I mean prismatic ending for 4, know. I mean leyline binding, right? You can leyline binding this, right?
That's the one. Yeah.
So there's some stuff that happens there, but I don't know.
I mean, it's good. It's good to have some interaction for almost every permanent.
For sure.
But I don't know, this card, I definitely think as I looked at this, it became clear to me, like this card is probably the best card that we saw. And I actually would be pretty happy if this was the best Modern card that came out of the set in a way.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
This power level seems okay to me, even for something as iconic as Isildur's Bane. But anyway.
Dave, if I open the one of a kind, I'll give it to you.
Oh, really?
So that you can play it.
That's nice.
Don't even slab it. Single sleeve.
What a flex that would be to just be like, I'm going to play it. Yeah.
Anyway, it's an interesting card. I think it has some play. That's probably the best card we've seen so far. But again, we probably have 200 more cards. How big is the set? Do we know how big the set is?
It's normal size. I think it's
like 240 cards or something.
They're usually 3 or 350. I think
we've seen like 12. So let's get through these 12.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at my copy of the Dive Down from Ixalan. There were 279 cards in that set. So,
jeez.
So we're looking around 300.
That's so many hobbits.
Speaking of,
we haven't even seen any elves. We haven't even seen any dwarves.
We've seen an elf. We haven't seen dwarves yet.
Yeah. I hope the dwarves look like Dave, and the elves look like me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's talk about hobbitses.
And the hobbitses look like me.
Filthy hobbitses.
We got Frodo, Sauron's Bane,
Mm-hmm.
Single white mana for a legendary halfling citizen. Couldn't make Hobbit a creature type, but they are halflings, I guess. And this is a figure of destiny. So it's got Orzhov mana, Orzhov hybrid mana, Orzhov. If Frodo is a citizen, it becomes a halfling scout with base power and toughness 2/3 and lifelink. Oh, he comes down as a 1/2. Then you can pay black.
Or 1/2 because of how Google always makes 1/2s.
Right.
I hate that.
Yeah, so black. If Frodo is a scout, it becomes a halfling rogue with whenever this creature deals damage to a player, that player loses the game if the ring has tempted you 4 or more times this game. Otherwise, the ring tempts you.
Okay, and tempts you means you, the controller of Frodo. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
As far as we know. Yeah.
So if you want to win the game through a way that will likely never happen, you want to tempt yourself 4 or more times and then hit them with a leveled up Frodo.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
I'm not as sure about that, Shane, where you're kind of like, it will likely never happen. Let's look at Frodo's best friend, also right now. Frodo's best friend is Gollum, patient plotter, which is a colorless black.
Maybe I guess kind of in the lore.
In my lore. I mean, they spent a lot of time together.
Hanging out, right?
Yeah. They spent a lot of time together. Legendary creature, halfling horror, it's a 3/1. When it leaves the battlefield, the ring tempts you. And then if you pay black, sacrifice a creature, you return Gollum from your graveyard to your hand. So this is expensive, but I feel like there's a clear engine set up between these two cards. It's very expensive for Modern. But the idea that you kill Gollum a bunch of times, or, it only says leaves the battlefield, so you could ephemerate Gollum to have him leave the battlefield, come back, leave the battlefield, come back. He tempts your opponent a bunch of times, and then you sneak in and hit with Frodo one time. I don't think that it's about Frodo hitting to trigger the tempts. I think it's possible that there are lots of ways that you get tempted by the ring, and then you knock in with Frodo one time and win the game. Now, is that a Modern thing? I have serious doubts about it, but I do think it's not going to be that hard to be tempted 4 times in a game, whatever that means.
Samwise Gamgee also sort of fits into this paradigm.
Yeah.
Our third friend in the throuple, yeah. Samwise the Stouthearted, 1 and a white for a halfling peasant with flash. He's a 2/1. And when he enters the battlefield, choose up to 1 target permanent card in your graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn, return it to your hand, and then the ring tempts you.
Yeah.
Can we talk about him being a halfling peasant? And maybe I didn't pick up on this in the movies, but I didn't really realize that there was such significant classism going on between Sam and Frodo. I didn't realize that someone was yeah, Sam's his gardener. And I was like, what? I thought they were just buddies.
I thought they were just buddies too.
Yeah, I thought they were just friends. I didn't realize that Sam is his servant. I guess he calls him Master Frodo, which I thought he was that's just kind of a term of endearment, Master Dave.
Master Shane.
Frodo.
What's up, Master Shane?
Master Shake. I thought he was Master Shake.
Yeah. But I don't. Yes, but by the way, it does play into it, because if Frodo dies, you get to bring to bring him back with Sam. If Gollum, I mean, that all thematically makes a lot of sense, right? Sam is always there to help protect them.
Yeah. Yeah, the tricky thing is they're all legendaries, so they suck in multiples, but maybe if you play legends into one another and they die, that can sort of play into the plan in a weird way. Bringing back Frodo and then having to do the whole song and dance of leveling up again actually sounds like a real pain in the butt.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, Figure of Destiny is not an easy card to use, and in Modern, those kinds of cards have become less useful. There are a lot of good Figure of Destiny style cards floating around in Modern, whether it's, the Abzan one from way back in the day to the original one, there's a lot of those around. So I don't know if it's really possible, but my only point was I don't think it's going to be that hard to get tempted 4 times in a game. And if there are benefits for that, maybe that's good, maybe it's bad. I don't know, but we'll see.
I'm usually tempted to concede 4 times each game, so...
I also wouldn't mind if the only cards that lead to temptation are this and the unforeseen, the not yet spoiled but probably coming Boromir card.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Only people who've actually interacted with the ring in the lore. By the way, I haven't read the books. I've only seen the movies, but I have seen the extended cuts.
Yeah, I'm with you there too. By the way, I'm gonna say this quietly because it's really gonna make some people mad. I couldn't make it through the books. I tried a couple times too. Yeah,
it's like the Bible where he's in
another
Seth
book I can't get through.
Seth begat Shane, and it's man, I don't want to read all that.
Yeah. I always trail off sometime in Two Towers. I really enjoyed reading The Hobbit recently with my kids. Maybe we'll do Lord of the Rings at some point. They do want to do Lord of the Rings at some point in the future, so I'll probably read it with them over the course of many nights coming up soon. But every time I show them
talking about food.
Yeah. Every time I show them Lord of the Rings, because I have a volume that's just all the books in one book. And I'm here's Lord of the Rings. Let me know when you guys want to read it. It's poof. It's 1,200 pages.
Okay, so those are, I think, maybe the cards that we certainly wanted to talk about for lore reasons. There are, of course, other flavorful cards and beloved characters that we have seen, such as Gandalf, such as Tom Bombadil, that haven't really jumped out to us. So we're just going to skip them for now.
I mean, I do want to say I'm glad Gandalf is not some busted card.
Yeah.
It's nice that Gandalf is a goofy potential playable.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Gandalf the White, though.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's when he got like ripped, right? Like he came back and like flexed, shirt busted open.
Yeah.
So we do have two cards we want to talk about.
Lightning
One is
shot
super
of his
weird.
nipples.
One is super weird. I'm going to let Stan talk about that one. And then one is a pet card that I want to talk about because I think it's interesting. We're going to do it fast. Stan?
All right. Let's talk about Reprieve.
Yeah.
1 and a white. Instant. Return target spell to its owner's hand. Draw a card. This reminds me of something. This reminds me of something that I used to love and someone that I used to know.
Except it's better.
But it's probably even better.
Yeah. Weirdly.
So this is the white remand. And the reason why people are saying that it might be
clamoring
better,
for it.
Yeah, I know Shane has, because it doesn't actually counter spells. It just returns them to their owner's hand, which in actual application means like you can get around something like Cavern of Souls, you can get around something like Supreme Verdict, and you don't have to play blue for this effect anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a note. So there's cards that have been templated like this in blue, right? Unsubstantiate says return spell to hand.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that always matters with this card is it says draw a card on it. That's the thing
Yes.
that always matters here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the initial reaction was actually the most excited among players. Like this was the card that got players most excited, whereas like the Ring got like Magic fans excited. This is where
Yeah.
people start talking about like, how am I putting this in my deck? I think people still have fond memories of playing Remand, but maybe they recognize the fact that like returning a spell is different and in some cases better than targeting a spell.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I'll let you go real quick. I love cards like this. I famously once traded a Force of Will for a set of Remand. So like I did a bad thing.
Yeah.
Famously, I've talked about it several times. I don't think this card is going to see play. I don't know where this card is going to see play because in Modern, what deck that wants this effect wouldn't have already been trying Remand out anyway? I mean, the corner case of it being good against Cavern of Souls is a thing, but it's not like a huge thing. So I don't know. I don't see this having a home. I could be wrong, of course. Color shifts matter, but I don't know. What do you think?
The only thing that I'm considering is that this can maybe help support like certain combo strategies that don't want to play white or that don't want to play blue. So like maybe something in Mardu or white black or even white green with like Devoted Druid. Like I'm thinking about like various combos, Druid one, Creativity being another, maybe something else that I'm overlooking that could use a little bit of interaction to protect their spells.
Yeah.
As like a nice way to like have to reduce the amount of splashing you have to do while still having like a powerful and flexible effect that's relatively cheap and also draws you a card.
Yeah. Fair. I think it's definitely possible. I'm a little. I mostly feel like Modern has gotten so mana efficient over the last few years that I think you're trading down on mana on this enough times, and many times your opponent might be able to just recast the spell again, which is the worst thing that can happen from Remand, right? It's like you remand it back to their hand and then they just cast it again. So I don't know. I don't know. But we'll see.
And honestly, like that's the only reason why I'm thinking about this less as a counter spell to interact with like your opponents on tempo and more about a way to interact with your own stuff and like maybe try to regain some tempo that way.
I got you. Yeah,
like the old store move of like remanding a grape shot.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I do think it's nice to be able to remand a Primeval Titan through Cavern of Souls. Like that's always an A+ move, but I don't know if that's enough for this card to get play. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. Okay, I had one card I wanted to talk about, mostly because I'm curious about the cycle, and that's Mount Doom. Mount Doom is a legendary land. It taps to pay 1 life to add black or red. Okay, so it's a pain land cycle with no colorless bailout. And it says 1 BR tap, Mount Doom deals 1 damage to each opponent. And then the other mode is 5 BR tap, sacrifice Mount Doom and a legendary artifact. Choose up to 2 creatures, then destroy the rest. Activate only as a sorcery. The only reason I think this is interesting, one is it'll be interesting if we get a pain land cycle. I think a lot of people were hoping for maybe the rest of the Horizon lands in this set. I think that this card means no, that's probably not going to happen. We do have the Shire, which is another kind of like location-based card, completely different mechanics though. So I don't know. It makes me wonder if there's going to be a cycle of allied pain lands that have additional abilities like this does, for one thing. The other thing is I don't think we've ever seen a wrath on a land. And even though it's a really expensive wrath and it has a really high bar to use it, the idea of having a deck where you can maybe slot in and just have a wrath that's in your land slot is pretty interesting, at least worth a glance, even though Modern's not really about wraths anymore.
No.
But if it doesn't cost you a card slot to do it, maybe it's usable in that way. I don't know. Do you think you've ever seen a wrath on a land? I don't think I have.
No, I don't think so either.
And if I did, it's probably equally as expensive.
Yeah.
So, legendary artifacts.
Yeah.
Like the ring, Zabaz.
Yeah. Zabaz.
We're always talking about him.
The Ozolith, isn't that a legend too?
Yeah.
I think the only way I think this legitimately sees any play is like if you want the ability to deal damage to yourself and deal damage to your opponent that like then triggers other cards. And we know that that's probably unlikely to be modern power level where it's like, hey, if you dealt damage, you get to do X, Y, and Z or cast this for cheaper. And I think it's cool that you have like the ability to always hit yourself like a pain land, but then always hit your opponent like some kind of like, you know, like your sort of reverse Grove of the Burn Willows type thing or whatever, where it's like, you know, it's nice to, those abilities have seen play, but I don't have any idea what this goes into.
Yeah, I mostly wanted to mention because of the land cycle thing, but maybe it's not part of a cycle. Maybe it's just Mount Doom, and that's what it is.
Yeah, people used to play Nurturing Peatland and the Orzhov version of that card in Death Shadow decks.
Yeah,
even though they were never on color. So maybe now we're a little bit closer to like a Death Shadow mana base that can deal damage to you on demand.
Yeah, we'll see.
You remember Death Shadow?
Yeah, it's still, you know, it's the 20th best deck or whatever in Modern. Anyway, I think that's enough for Lord of the Rings right now. We got some stuff to talk about with old cards now coming to Arena. So we're going to talk about Shadows over Innistrad Remastered. Stay with us.
You know what I miss about America is getting samples of Barrister and Man in the mail when I least expect it.
That's what I'm smelling right now.
Me too. I got 2 shaving soap samples this week from Will and the team at Barrister Man. I got Rhapsody and Red Letter Day.
Big same.
Yeah, their anniversary celebratory fragrance for their upcoming 10-year anniversary. Let's start with Red Letter Day.
I'm smelling it right now.
Shane, you're smelling it right now. What do you think?
I like it. So this is like big cedar energy, like cedar, sandalwood, spiciness, like probably, you know, some bergamot. It's got to be some bergamot.
Oh, returning guest host Bergamot is here again.
You never leave home without a pocket full of bergamot.
Yeah, that's my favorite Spin Doctors album.
It's basically kind of like a spicy, citrusy, woody smell to me. What are you getting out of it, Dave?
No, same exact thing. I think that their description of how it smells, that it's sandalwood plus bergamot plus, I'm looking at the description right now. You had it in front of you. Oh, it is vanilla, bergamot, cedar, sandalwood, leather. And they say cedar twice in their product copy. Will, you might want to fix that. But yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. Double cedar.
Okay. Now I'm opening Rhapsody.
Yeah.
I've got the Rhapsody open. And this is like last night when I opened it, because I was like, hey, I'm going to try to prep for this. I was like, these smell pretty similar. But then now in the separation of time and these two products, they smell really different. Like this is like way more floral spice to me.
Actually, Will's description of Rhapsody, which is an homage to a fragrance called New York from the 80s, from the House of Nikolai.
I've never smelled that, even though I myself am from the 80s.
Yeah. Well, we weren't into fragrances in the 80s. It incorporates the scent of pear blossoms in the spirit of the title New York. I'm reading the product copy here, which bloom in Central Park in the springtime and have a famously pungent odor into citrus, floral, spice structure. It's all about the beauty of spring.
Yeah, this is good. It's definitely good. I like this. Yeah, I like both of these a lot. Like I'm hyped to use these. Like this is the kind of thing where it's like I wish I shaved more because it takes me so long to go through any of the shaving soaps and the samples, and so it's just like, man, I'm just gonna shave this beard off so I can use more Barrister Man products.
Yeah.
And
well, Cue these up for spring use because that is the season they are for.
So yeah, if you want to check out various Iron Man products, if you want to check out these new fragrances of Rhapsody and Red Letter Day, I think they come in more than just the shaving soaps, of course, if you're not a shaver. And you can use code the Dive Down 2023 for 15% off your first order over at Barrister and Man. All kinds of personal grooming products. And that gets you, like I said, 50% off your order. Lets Will and the team know that you came to them through the Dive Down. We appreciate you using the code, and we appreciate, Will, you sending us these samples and keeping us looking and smelling good. Dave, Stanislav.
Shane.
It only took 3 years, but we're getting another remastered set on Arena.
Is that when the last one came out? 3 years ago?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So this, I really hope this is accurate because this is from like that, the MTG wiki site that I get a surprising amount of information from. So both Amonkhet and Kaladesh Remastered came out in 2020, according to that site. And then we got nothing since then. I don't know what happened in 2020 that would have impacted the workflow of these remastered sets. I mean, nothing weird happened then. But Shadows over Innistrad Remastered is coming out on March 21st, so it's available by the time you're listening to this episode. These remastered sets on Arena, at least, have combined, historically at least, kind of like a block of cards into a single set of cards. And they kind of, have a focus of limited. In this, it has, of course, a focus on historic and developing Pioneer on Arena. So this is going to have 302 cards, which includes 15 lands. They leave out 129 cards from Shadows over Innistrad. They leave out 85 cards from Eldritch Moon, and I'll list all of those now. Interesting here, they also add 81 cards from the original Innistrad block that will be in the packs and be part of the limited environment, but of course aren't going to be added to Explorer because that tries to emulate Pioneer, and unfortunately, Innistrad's not in Pioneer. And there's a bunch of like rarity shifts that won't impact Constructed, but maybe they'll save you a wild card here and there. But more importantly for us, this will move Explorer ever closer to matching Pioneer. So what we thought we'd do today is kind of go over what are considered or what we think are the important cards from this release and where they might see some play. Because this is not just to fill content. We're already at an hour 10 on my clock of the recording, which is fine for me to stop. But it's good for us to pay attention to what's going on in Arena because it is a way that a lot of people engage with Magic. And we think Pioneer is a pretty good format. So the more we can, just monitor the progress we have towards actually playing Pioneer on Arena, I think it's just kind of a good idea for ourselves and for the listeners just to be like, oh, hey, like I can play X, Y, and Z on Arena right now. We'll get into kind of that a little bit later, like what decks this gets us closer to or entirely into, because I think that's pretty exciting. So I want to start with the cards. Let's talk about these cards. We're not going to read these cards stats. We're not going to go into that level of detail. I think we'll just kind of be like, here's the card. Here's where we think it might see some play, and just blow through these. So let's just start with colorless. And I think the best card here is Emrakul, the Promised End, which doesn't really see play in Pioneer, but has appeared in some things like the big mono white devotion decks. And I think this is just kind of an interesting long-term option to have in the format. Do you know what I mean? And there's things like Decimator of the Provinces is in here as well, which has seen play in kind of like those Dredgeless Dredge decks, giving you kind of like sort of an overrunny type effect. So I think it's good to have those options for, I think, random play or kind of, cheeky meme type decks like Dredgeless Dredge kind of is, although that has won events, especially in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, Emrakul is always going to be a good top-end card to keep an eye on Pioneer. It shows up in random places, so
yeah. All right, I'll get us through. I'll just take us through white, and someone else can tag into blue. Let's just do it the easy way. Archangel Avacyn doesn't really see play. Has been in Azorius control lists here and there.
Blue-white Flash was one of the best decks at the beginning of Pioneer. Not at this point, but it could come back.
Wow, was that in Pioneer?
Yeah, it was before the Smuggler's Copter ban.
Oh, yes. We've got Griff's Boon. Aura's decks get a little boost here. Unfortunately, there's still no Glade Cover Scout, for Selesnya auras, but Grisboon is a good addition to the format. We've got Selfless Spirit, an essential piece for Spirits decks for years now. So this is really good. We'll talk more about Spirits in a bit.
Yeah, not just Spirits. It gives all creatures indestructible.
All creatures great and small. Yes. You're right. I mean, it does go into random decks sometimes. We're just like, oh, okay, let's throw a Selfless Spirit in here, protect from wraths and things like that. We've got Sigarda's Aid, getting us closer to Pioneer Hammer. A little bit more on the status of Pioneer Hammer later. And Thalia, Heretic Cathar, which does see some play in some mono-white humans decks and other humans decks.
Yeah.
So cool. There's white. Anything that you all are particularly interested in?
Spirit's cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, does Selfless Spirit appear in the sideboard of your Spirits builds these days or not?
It doesn't see a lot of play from what the list that I've been paying attention to, but I've been seeing it actually pop up in Xbox Greg's Elves sideboards. So
interesting.
That's what sort of reminded me that it has utility in creature decks in general.
Yeah. I mean, I like Sigarda's Aid being here. It's a card that's essential. I think it's an important card from this format. So I think just it being around is cool. Meaning Shadows over Innistrad form block, like not meaning Pioneer yet. I think someday it might be something in Pioneer, but we'll see. Let's talk about blue. There were 4 cards in blue, and 2 in particular, super cards that I really like, and then a couple of other ones. So there's Invasive Surgery. That's the instant. That's a counter target sorcery spell. This is a card that sees play in sideboards. You know, if you have Delirium, it does like a surgical extraction effect on the sorcery that you counter with it. And so that's big often against creativity, against other decks that have giant sorceries. It gets played in Phoenix somewhat frequently, but there's always other places. So it's a good sideboard card that wasn't here before. There's 2 cards for Phoenix that I think fall into this for sure. One is Pieces of the Puzzle, a card that I don't think I ever really saw becoming a great card. And then over time, it became very clear how good it is. And in Pioneer Phoenix, it's pretty much essential for that deck, and it's a great engine piece for that. And then also Thing in the Ice, which is a card we've been sitting kind of waiting for a while to come to Arena that does really important things. Occasionally it's played as a number, some number in Phoenix, as many as 3 or 4 sometimes. Other times it's not even in the deck. But this also opens your kind of like Phoenix-less Phoenix style deck. So your Is It mid-range, Is It control decks with a great payoff that maybe they didn't have access to before. Thing in the Ice is another way that whole deck can go to build around instead of Phoenix, basically. And then you have Pour Over the Pages, which is important to Lotus Field. Yeah. Any of these cards, Stan, are you excited to play Thing in the Ice on Arena?
Maybe for the point you made about like playing it in bluish controlling decks, like that could be cool. Bear in mind, this is also going into Historic, which is not a format we really care about anymore because of Alchemy, but Historic has Faithless Looting. So now you can play Is It Phoenix with Thing in the Ice and Faithless Looting again. And that's kind of neat.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We'll do black too. Collected Brutality is in this set. Used to be a super important sideboard card in Modern and also sometimes in Pioneer. Doesn't see as much play as it used to for some reason, but I think that it's a good card that could come back. Probably most of the reason that this doesn't see play is because there is no good aggro red deck in Pioneer.
Yes, they're not preventing it with Collective Brutality.
Yeah, so I think if that happens, it might come back as a sideboard card. Haunted Dead, that's a card that's used in Dredgeless Dredge, and it has that ability to go in your graveyard and make a token, that whole thing. Liliana, the Last Hope. It's a good Planeswalker. Used to see a lot of play. I thought it would be a powerful card in Pioneer at this point, since it's not really played in Modern anymore, but it's a good card that we should keep our eyes on. And that's kind of it for black.
Yeah, the thing I just want to mention about black in general here is that in playing a little bit of Explorer the last week or two, I've been seeing a lot of people mess around with Mono Black Devotion because it has Gary and Phyrexian Obliterator and Nykthos. And Liliana the Veil can fit into that. Lily the Last Hope can fit into that. And I wonder if just like cards with as many black pips as possible could be sneaky good in Explorer specifically.
Interesting. it feels to me it's that like if that deck was good, it could be good in regular Pioneer, because if you're in regular Pioneer, you can play with Pack Rat. But anyway, another thing to come back to some other time. Red.
Yeah, you want to talk about another bad color?
Yeah, unfortunately. So red only seems to get 2 cards, is what in Shane's estimation.
Not even really. These are super debatable.
But I mean, these are 2 cards that I think are very cool, and one that I love. Bedlam Reveler is making it now. It's a card that I wish was good enough to be playable now, but I don't know. It's going to be it takes some doing to make that work. And it was always better in Modern than it was in Pio anyway. And then Collective Defiance, which is an interesting card because it has that what am I trying? Windfall
synergy
style mode. Yeah.
Oh, synergy with Narset?
Discard and redraw. Yeah, so it goes with Narset kind of.
Yeah.
And that was
target
a deck
player
that
discards all their cards in their hand, then draws that many cards.
Correct. Windfall. Yeah.
I thought it's a wheel.
Windfall effect.
Wheel would be discard your hand and draw 7. Windfall is discard and redraw the same, I believe, although someone's going to be mad at me on Reddit because I don't have that card exactly in front of me. But yeah, I mean, Stan, you had a lot of fun with an Izzet control deck that used Narset and Days Undoing and was starting to switch over to this card.
Yes. And I mean, that deck doesn't see play since the Expressive Iteration ban, but now, we have some more pieces to that. Maybe you can hobble something in a smaller format like Explorer.
Yeah.
Because of those 2 cards specifically. Collective Defiance and Thing in the Ice.
Shane, you want to talk green real quick?
Sure. So we've got Eldritch Evolution. We've got Traverse the Uvenwald. We've got Vessel of Nascency. And these are all basically just part of Obzon Greasefang now. And that's it.
Yeah.
So we have 3 Greasefang cards.
Yeah. Eldritch Evolution is a huge thing here, for sure. It's an important card in Pioneer. It's an important card that opens combo possibilities for a lot of different decks, creature-based combo, especially into the future. Is it in Obzon Greasefang right now? Because the decks that did the best at the Pro Tour did not have Eldritch Evolution, for what it's worth. They did have Traverse and Vessel. I do think these are, talking with Doom about it at the time after the Pro Tour, Eldritch is kind of like one branch, and I think Traverse is sort of like a different branch of Greasefang.
I saw like a well-performing one that did have Eldritch. It was like maybe one of the second or third like top placing Eldritch in the Swiss, but I think it's just another piece of it that gives the option. So I think it's not necessarily all in the same exact build of the same deck, but they're all part of the potential package.
And they're powerful cards for the future as well.
Stan, talk about gold.
Yeah,
it's got the card I equate most with you. Like I think this is Stan the card to me.
And you're referring, of course, to Prized Amalgam.
Yes, Prized Amalgam. Yes.
Yeah. It's in some dredge style things that don't seem to really exist in Pioneer anymore, but they might one day.
I mean, I looked it up.
And real dredge, in theory.
It took first. It took like first in like a Japanese tournament like just earlier this month. So it has legs. It just depends on, if you want to walk with them.
Yeah, here's a card that does not have legs, but I still really like, and that's Spell Queller.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't have legs because it's non-corporeal.
That's the right word to describe it.
Oh, yeah. I get it now.
Here's the last one. Nahiri the Harbinger.
Mm-hmm.
Combo piece. You can cheat in Emrakul's, this new Emrakul card. You don't have to pay the mana. And then among the lands, like, we got the bad land cycle of like Foreboding Ruins and Choked Estuary, but we also got 2 kind of interesting cards. One is, of course, Westphale Abbey, which you guys talked about with Doom last week as like a nice mana sink when you have a bunch of cheap creatures. And the other one I'll mention here is Gyre Reach Sanitarium.
Yeah.
Which is that legendary land, 2 and tap, each player draws a card, then discards a card. Pairs with Narset sometimes.
Perfect. Sweet.
All right. Why don't we hop into something different here? Let's talk about so you guys have been playing a bunch of Arena lately, as you've been playing Pioneer as well.
What's a bunch?
How close? Okay, I thought maybe you were both dipping into it some.
Yeah, I have been.
Just a dip, just a toe.
So right now, I'm in a tough spot where it's like I'm not playing Arena on my computer a lot, and I'm sort of like trying to get back to it as like a phone game. And what I did is after doing the Golgari episode with Doom, I was like, wait a second, this deck is basically on Arena. So I could be getting some reps in with this, but not have to be playing Magic Online on my real computer. And so like I went to Arena and I bought like 40 packs with like gold I had to get like the necessary wilds I needed, and more on the Arena. I mean, more a little bit on the Arena economy, I think, later. But I got the wilds. I crafted up like the 16 rares I needed. Questionable choice to make Golgari sacrifice instead of something like, you know, maybe tier 1, but anyway, I just wanted to do it. So the status of the format is Shane has a hard time playing 35-minute best of 3 matches with a sacrifice deck on his phone, right? Sure. So what I've been doing more of is playing best of 1 mono red just to get through my quests, but I have been trying to do some Golgari sac stuff as well. But what I'm seeing in the best of 3 and best of 1 is always the Wild West, right? Like people do way more linear, way more combo-y stuff. And best of 3, you see kind of the classic stuff where it's like people doing Rakdos mid-range, people doing Azorius control, people doing like elves type strategies. So it's like I'm seeing kind of what I would consider the explorer meta that I would expect. Stan, you've been playing some too. You've been seeing more best of 1 than best of 3. Is that correct?
Yes. Similar reason though. Like I'm just playing it on my phone on the tram to work.
Sweet.
And sometimes on the loo.
Would you agree with me that the best of 1 meta is still a little bit weird?
No. I mean, there's like a best of 1 meta that bears like a very vague
mono blue spirits.
Not so much mono blue. Actually, I don't think I've ever seen mono blue, but it's like Elves and Greasefang are really popular. Angels is really popular.
Oh, yeah. Angels and Clerics, like people love those like life gain synergy decks.
Yeah, but even like blue-white control, I see a ton of. The decks that I don't see at all is like any version of, is it Phoenix? But maybe there's like just no playable version of Phoenix and Explorer. I guess I see mono red quite a bit too, for that matter.
Is there a playable version of Phoenix in Pioneer? Is the real question.
I mean, it won the regional championship.
Yes. Yeah. Stan, I want to let listeners know we just lost Dave. He had to drop his kids. Sunday morning is a different time for us to record than usual, and sometimes kids get rowdy. Thankfully, I don't have any of those, so it's going to be you and me talking about Arena, which is good because I don't think Dave has been smartly, perhaps, has not been getting back into Arena. So let's chat, my friend. I didn't get to record with you the last 2 weeks, and I missed seeing your face. So I'm glad we have this time together.
Should we just scrap this Arena talk and just catch up for the next time?
Just the two of us.
Yeah,
anyway.
and sorry, the last one I want to mention is also Mono Green Devotion does actually also see like a little bit of best of 1 play.
Yeah,
and
I have not seen Mono Green Devotion much yet. But like, I'm also like, I seriously am in bronze. Like, I have not played in Arena almost at all since October. So this has been, substantial shift somewhat in the metagame since then, or at least in terms of like where I am on the ladder. Like I'm bronze 4. I like made silver last night because you literally cannot lose progress by losing games, which is the best. It's the best. Makes you feel so good at Magic. So I feel like when I'm playing it, I still feel like the meta is pretty narrow, right? Where there's not a ton of decks, especially on like, the legitimate ladder end of things. But once Shadows comes out, I'm somewhat more excited because I think there's more decks that people will have the ability to play. I think the big winners here are Greasefang, which gained the cards from like the Pro Tour builds, like Traverse, Vessel, Eldritch Evolution, that kind of stuff. Spirits, I think, is a big winner here. I mean, even just getting 2 cards like Selfless Spirit and Spell Queller, that's a big get. Like Spell Queller is a really big get. Are you hyped for Spirits?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I suspect it.
I can't wait to quell some spells.
Yeah. I mean, Dredgeless Dredge, kind of a thing. I mean, like I said, it randomly wins things. It is missing Gather the Pack from Magic Origins, which I think is kind of essential to it. So we'll see how quickly that gets added, if ever. But we're pretty close to explore as a Pioneer.
Phoenix is also, I think, a really big winner. Like getting Thing in the Ice and Pieces of the Puzzle, like I think are pretty substantial gets. Like Thing in the Ice, you feel its absence in Phoenix decks that don't have it. And like it's that package of Phoenix plus Thing in the Ice with like the occasional Ledger Shredder is sort of like the threat package of basically all successful Phoenix decks these days. And I think we're going to start seeing like a version of that in Explorer the way we've seen like versions of other abridged Pioneer decks now.
My issue with that, and I made 3 categories of Pioneer to Explorer status right now, just to give everyone kind of a status update on this. And I will be honest, I put Izzet Phoenix in the stuff you can't really play still because there's no Treasure Cruise. And I feel like Treasure Cruise is so essential to the success of this deck because you have to refill your hand, and that's like the thing I think that powers Izzet Phoenix in the format. And it's not like the recursion of Arclight. It's not the flipping up of the upheaval effect from Thing. And I agree with you. Like I think it will be a playable deck if you want to play that style of deck. I just don't think it might be into a truly decent best of 3 grinding the ladder winning tournament style deck. But that's fine. Like you don't have to play Arena as like I'm testing for the Pro Tour. It can be something where it's like I'm playing a deck I think is fun on my phone.
Yes.
And that's perfectly fine. Like you can engage with Arena in a lot of different ways. You can be completely free to play, grind some gold, that kind of thing, do your dailies. But do you want to talk about like what I think the status of Explorer is compared to Pioneer?
Yeah, I love your list. I think that could be a good way to put a cap on this episode.
Yeah. So once Shadow comes out, I took the top 15 decks on Goldfish, and here's what I have is like playable, if not completely the same. Rakdos midrange, you don't have Dreadbore, you don't have Urborg, which are good cards. But I think there's like, it's definitely playable because you see it a lot. So people clearly like playing this deck. Blue / Azorius Spirits, Abzan Greasefang, Azorius Control, although you can't pivot to like the cat sideboard plan exactly, but I'm sure there are other creature-based aggressive sideboard plans that you can incorporate if you so desire.
Dream Trawler.
I always hate seeing that card. Gruul Boats, Mono White Humans, Selesnya Angels. These are all just like decks that you can play right now, fully Pioneer built out. Stuff you can vaguely play, Mono Green Devotion. You don't have Oath of Nissa, which is kind of your big loss. It impacts not only like your green pips, and your card selection, but it also impacts like your weird planeswalker plans where like you don't get the mana to cast like your Nicol Bolas and stuff like that as at all. 5-color fires like Enigmatic Incarnation decks. You don't have Chain to the Rocks, but I think you can vaguely play that. I was talking with some of our Discord friends, and they were saying, yeah, it's playable. I play it. And here's stuff you can't really play. Lotus Field, you don't have Thespian Stage, you don't have Behold the Beyond, you're not playing this deck. Indomitable Creativity, you don't have Xenagos, you don't have Worldspite Worm. That is kind of essential. Is it Phoenix?
Well, they have other payoffs. Like they have that Izzet God that like makes all the 1/1s that like combos with that thing that like lets you draw cards when a creature enters the battlefield. It's clunky, but it wins on the spot.
Oh, okay. Stanislav, if someone asks you if you're an Izzet God, say yes. Izzet Phoenix, like I said, no delve spells to refill your hand. Omnath to light, there's no bring to light. Mm-hmm. Dimir Control has no Days Undoing, has no dig through time. Those seem like big losses for this style of deck. I'm sure it is playable. I'm sure if you so desire, you can play a counterspell removal deck. I'm not going to do that, but people will. So this is pretty far from Pioneer still. I heard the stat that 95% of the cards from the Pro Tour are now legal in Explorer, and this kind of shows you what a difference 5% can make. Like just a few cards here and there is just like, yeah, these decks are not at all workable. Some of them, of course.
And maybe that's okay. Like to your point, this doesn't need to be like the most competitive way to test your chops in Pioneer, and I think like we can still play it online on Moto. You can sort of like get a sample for it. I think that's maybe the best thing about it is like this gives arena players a taste of what Pioneer is sort of like.
Yeah.
So that they can maybe potentially graduate to like Paper Pioneer or Moto and Moto's formats in general.
I mean, I would like to be able to like play more of the real Pioneer format, and I'm kind of disappointed with the pace that we are making towards Pioneer, but we're getting there. But I still feel like, Explorer is not like a quote unquote real format, but like any format you're playing is a real format, right? But it's a good way to get like reps in. It's a good way to play some events. It's a good way to keep earning your free gold and such, to like keep your head above water as we do march towards Pioneer. And like, I think that's good. Like, I think it's good to just be like, okay, I have a way to engage with Magic that's perhaps more casual, or perhaps I care a lot less about, or perhaps I'm playing like best of one on the tram, or, in other ways that you might spend your day. So I think that is fine. Like I'm fine with it. It's fun to like kind of get some Golgari reps in and mono red reps and that kind of stuff. But yeah, anyway, that's our kind of arena check-in, our check-in with Explorer. I will say the golden packs are sweet. Like I love the golden packs. That is like I can't believe WOTC gave us something for nothing. Took nothing away, only added to the economy. There's no tricks. Can't believe
So this is like when you purchase 10 booster packs, it like fills another wheel, but this is the golden pack wheel. And I guess, is it when you purchase 10 packs, you get like just a free pack that's all rares and mythics?
Every 10, you don't have to buy like 10 at a time. So it's like, every 10 you purchase, not earn, then you get a 6-card pack that has at least one mythic. They are all standard legal. And the other cards have a chance to be mythic 1 in 8 times. You hope you don't hit that because rares are better than mythics.
But they're all rares though, right? Like,
yes, there's 5 rares, 1 mythic default. No wild cards, duplicate protection, all standard legal. So it's sweet. It's just free stuff. It is just free rares and mythics. And yeah, it adds up a lot. Like I bought 40 packs. I got 24 extra rares and mythics. Like I got like 3 Copperline Gorges in those and stuff like that. Like stuff I wanted,
Yeah, that's a good point. Lands are good.
Yeah, free
I was
stuff.
kind of lamenting that it's just standard cards, because like I feel like I'm just gonna want as many shadow rares as possible. But like, yeah, we have good lands now.
Oh yeah, I want like Brotherhood's End, like those lands or whatever. No, Brothers War like lands. I want the lands from 1. So yeah, I'm fine with it. Anyway, Stanislav, we've had another episode.
Yeah, that was fun. We'll maybe over the next couple of weeks we can share if there's any other developments in Arena that we haven't mentioned or where it diverges from Pioneer. But until then, like a nice new tram game for now until I get sick of it again. So be it.
Exactly.
And that wraps up this week's show. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you get the latest episodes as soon as they come out. And if you use Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and review. If you'd like to submit a question to the podcast or just reach out in general, you can tweet us at The Dive Down, all one word, or email thedivedown@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/thedivedown and check out our store over at thedivedown.com/store. Shout out to Mana Traders for sponsoring The Dive Down. Sign up for Mana Traders using promo code THEDIVEDOWN10, all one word, 10 is a number, to get 10% off your first 2 months of renting Magic Online cards, and get some amazing shaving soaps, body soaps, fragrances, and more at Barrister & Mann using promo code THEDIVEDOWN2023 for 15% off your first order. And finally, save some money on paper cards over at Nerd Rage Gaming with code DIVE8 for 8% off your order from NRG. That's DIVE and the number 8. As always, special thanks to the bands Nowhere and Spaceblood for letting us use their music. And until next week, get out there and you shall not pass!